All right, thank you for tuning in to Chompin at the Bit. This is episode 14. And on this episode, we're going to go ahead and take a look at week 3 in the NFL. Going to recap it. So, like I do every week, I'm going to pick the 3 teams that impressed me this weekend. And then on the flip side, the 3 teams that have me scratching my head. Then we're going to take a look at the Monday night game that just happened between the Ravens and the Chiefs. And looking at that matchup, we're going to talk about, there's a lot of analysts out there trying to throw around that Mahomes versus Jackson is going to be the next Brady versus Manning rivalry. So I'm going to take a look at that and see whether that's a good comparison or not. Then, of course, whenever I do my recap show, I have to end the episode with the review of my picks to see how well I did. And then after that, close it out with a look forward to upcoming episodes. So with that, before we get started on the recap, just want to say congratulations to the Tampa Bay Lightning as they won the Stanley Cup tonight and have become the first, I believe the stat is they're the first North American team to win a championship since everything was shut down with the pandemic. So, like I said, congrats to them. They've kind of been in contention the past 2 or 3 years. Didn't get over the hump, but they pulled it out this year. So, just wanted to say that before we get started. But then with that, week 3, another week, great slate of games. We had some that went down to the wire, a couple of blowouts, but all in all, another good week of NFL action. So the 3 teams that did impress me this weekend, my first team are the Bills. Now the Bills are very close to ending up on my teams that disappointed, because in that game the Bills actually went up 28-3, then managed to blow the lead, found themselves down 32-28, and then Josh Allen led Buffalo down the field for a game-winning touchdown. They won the game 35-32. So the reason why that I've been impressed with the Bills, it's Josh Allen. I know Josh Allen struggled last year, and it was mainly because, he knew he was a mobile quarterback. So it seemed like a lot of the times last year he was looking to use his legs to gain positive yards. But this year, it seems like he's taken that next step with his passing, because against the Rams, he threw for over 300 yards. And like I said, he led them on that, late game, fourth quarter drive when you have all the pressure, especially at home. And he made great throws. Sure, he got help with pass interference call when they were in the red zone. That was a little controversial, but he did take advantage of it, and they got the win. So they are now 3-0 and atop the AFC East. Second team that impressed me, the San Francisco 49ers. Now, most of you probably know the 49ers had a rash of injuries last week. They lost Jimmy Garoppolo, their starting quarterback, Raheem Mostert, one of their running backs. They lost Nick Bosa on the defensive line. They lost Solomon Thomas on the offensive line. They're without George Kittle, their top pass catcher and tight end. Now, granted, they did play the Giants. I get that. But they went in there with Nick Mullins as their quarterback, and they won 36-9. Offense looked like it didn't miss a beat at all. Once again, you can contribute that to the Giants, because the Giants aren't that good this year. But it's still an impressive showing for a backup quarterback to come in, and you can still put up 36 points. And the defense missing some parts, because I didn't even mention they're also without Richard Sherman, their corner, and I believe the safety that they're missing too. Name slips my mind right now, but yeah, they held the Giants to only 9 points. Once again, Giants aren't a juggernaut offense, but there's been instances where teams will have some injuries and then, they kind of play down to their talent. And this easily could have been a game where, the Giants hung in there and maybe the 49ers pull it out in the end. But no, 49ers left no doubts in this game. My third team, New England Patriots. So they went up against the Raiders, previously unbeaten. Raiders were coming off that big win against the Saints. And all the Patriots did was rush for 250 yards. They forced 3 turnovers from the Raiders. They even got a defensive touchdown on a sack fumble in the end zone. The defense, they held Waller, the tight end for the Raiders, to, I believe it was 1 catch. They were flying all around the ball on defense. They kind of minimized Josh Jacobs, who's a threat at the running back position. And they frustrated Derek Carr. Sorry. David Carr's his brother. But yeah, they won 36-20. And other than the Raiders scoring a late touchdown, it wasn't that close. So those are the 3 teams that definitely impressed me this weekend. But now we got to look to the other side and the 3 teams that just left me scratching my head. The first team, this is becoming a weekly ritual now. The Atlanta Falcons. They did it again, everybody. They did it again. So last week against the Cowboys, it was a 15-point lead that they blew. Well, they won up that and had a 16-point lead this week against the Bears. And mind you, the Bears benched Mitch Trubisky, went to Nick Foles when they were down, and Nick Foles led them to the 16-point comeback. So, yeah, 16-point lead. All of a sudden, Atlanta was coming up with 3 and outs on offense. Nick Foles was finding guys wide open in the secondary. And also with that, the Bears had 2 touchdowns called back because of replay. Now, one, Anthony Miller dropped a wide open pass in the end zone. He did have to dive for it, so it was a little bit difficult, but it's one he should have held on to. And then the other one, Allen Robinson caught it down the sideline in the end zone. Now, when I was watching it, I thought it was a touchdown because I thought he had it, came down on the ground, and then the Falcons corner, Dennard, wrestled it from him when they were on the ground. So I thought it should have been a touchdown, but they gave Atlanta the ball. In the end, it didn't matter because the Bears ended up coming back and winning anyway. But it's just, once again, more questions for Atlanta. One, Julio Jones didn't play. So for Falcons fans out there, it's the yearly ritual where Julio has a hamstring injury or a foot injury, misses a game or 2. And then the defense, once again, missing tackles, especially the secondary. They can't seem to bring anybody down once they make a catch. And then on top of that, they can't cover anybody either because the D-line isn't getting any pressure on quarterbacks. So, they did create a couple of turnovers, which is what led to Trubisky getting benched. But all in all, they did not play well yet again. So more questions for Dan Quinn to answer. I've stated on previous episodes, Quinn should have been gone before the season started, I believe. But you got him now, so I'm guessing he's going to finish the year. I don't know. For up to me, if you don't want to do it in the middle of, early on in the season, you do have a bye week coming up. You could easily let him go during the bye week. I'm just throwing that out there. And make matters worse, the Falcons next week have to go to Green Bay and face Aaron Rodgers in that hot offense on Monday night. So now they're going to be on the national stage. Hopefully they figure some things out, because the last thing they need is to get blown out Monday Night Football or do what they've done the past 2 weeks, have a lead and lose it late. Because then at that point, maybe Arthur Blank's hand gets forced and they have to just let Quinn go. But we'll see. Second team that disappointed me, the Eagles. I don't know how many of you watched that game, but so basically what happened was the Bengals went, down to the end in the fourth quarter, ended up tied at 23. They get into overtime. Neither team could do anything offensively until like the last 20 seconds when the Eagles had the ball. They were within field goal range. Mind you, like the back end of field goal range. But their kicker, Elliott, does have a strong leg. So they came out to kick a 59-yarder, which, like I said, he does have the leg for it. And as only the Eagles could do, one of their linemen jumped offside, 5-yard penalty. So now it becomes a 64-yard field goal. So you're a team that's 0-2. You have a chance to kick a 64-yarder. There's only, at this point, I think there's only like 15 seconds left. So what would you have done? I was watching it. I was like, you might as well just let him. Either you let him kick the 64-yarder, or you go for it on fourth down, see if you can pick up the first down, and then try to kick the field goal. The Eagles did neither. They punted the ball. So clearly at that point, they're playing for the tie. And of course, once the Bengals got it, they couldn't do anything with the ball, because at that point there was like 7 seconds left and they were deep in their own end. But yeah, I don't understand what the Eagles are doing there. It seemed like a simple choice for me. I mean, I would have let him kick it, because I've seen Elliott kick long field goals. He has the leg for it. But like I said, if you weren't going to do that, then you have to go for it on fourth down to at least try to play for the win. You don't play for a tie. Nobody ever does that. So, but luckily, the Eagles are in the NFC East. They are 0-2-1. But the leader of that division are the, Cowboys and Washington at 1-2. So nobody's exactly running away with that one yet. So the Eagles' season is still, somewhat up in the air right now. If they can turn it around, they can find themselves on top of that division in a couple of weeks here. If not, who knows? Because between the Giants, Washington, and Dallas, who knows what those three teams are going to look like. And the final team that has me scratching my head, the Ravens. I get it. The Ravens are 2-0. Were 2-0 coming into the Monday night game against the Chiefs, another 2-0 team. As people said, arguably the top two teams in the AFC, if not the NFL. So as I sat down to watch this game, I was expecting it to be, either a back and forth kind of shootout game, or tightly contested, game down to the wire, ball in either Mahomes or Jackson's hand with a chance to win it. Well, that didn't happen. The Chiefs looked like the much better team, absolutely dominated the Ravens. And by the end of the game, they threw up Lamar Jackson's stats, and it wasn't pretty. Lamar Jackson threw for 97 yards. He is the quarterback, so only throwing for 97 yards. That tells you the story right there. And then rushing yards, he had 84 yards. So I guess the fact that game was only 34-20, maybe you have to give Ravens some credit. I don't know, but yeah, just watching it, 34-20 doesn't even do that game justice. It was not that close. I mean, yes, that's still 2 touchdowns, but if you watched that, you would have thought the Chiefs were up by 4 touchdowns. When the Chiefs had the ball on offense, it looked like they could do whatever they wanted. The Ravens, it was, Jackson would drop back, try to beat the defense with his legs. Sure, he had a couple of decent runs, but he also did run into a couple of sacks as well. He was, a little bit off on some of his throws downfield, which I think I said in the last episode was the Ravens' best chance at beating the Chiefs was to establish the run, do some play action, and try to beat that Chiefs defense over the top with, Hollywood Brown or Mark Andrews, their tight end. Now, Andrews did have a drop in the end zone, which would have been a big play in the game, but he did have to lay out for it, so, it wasn't, like an easy pass that he dropped, but it is a play that he normally does come up with, so it's still a drop. But yeah, not to say the Ravens can't be there in the end in the AFC. It's like, this could be a look ahead to what the AFC title game might be. But watching the Ravens tonight, it's not, set in stone. Because now other teams in the AFC are looking at it as, okay, so if we meet the Ravens in the playoffs or even during the year, we see how to beat them. Stop their running game, force Lamar Jackson to beat you with his arm, which was kind of the playbook going into the year. But, when the Ravens won their first 2 games, it was looking like maybe their offense had turned the corner. But tonight, going up against a good Chiefs team, it was obvious that Jackson still has some improving to do in terms of accuracy. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. Mahomes hit all of his weapons. They put up points. Edwards-Helaire ran the ball effectively, and the defense, did enough to win the game. So those are the 3 teams that had me scratching my head, and the 3 teams that impressed me. But now I want to look into, I guess, an interesting topic because with the Monday night game, of course, it became the marquee matchup of Patrick Mahomes. Remember, don't call him Pat Mahomes, because if you watch the game, his mom tweeted out to ESPN that they needed to stop calling him Pat Mahomes, which Mahomes did explain at the end of the game that his dad is Pat, he's Patrick, so yeah. But it was a little funny moment in the game. But yeah, so they're kind of touting the matchup as Mahomes versus Jackson. And if you put up both quarterback stats, that was like a first round knockout if it was a boxing match. Because Mahomes threw, I believe, for over 300 yards. As I said, Lamar threw for under 100 yards. And you put that together, you end up with a 2 touchdown loss by the Ravens. So looking at that, they were saying that it's the next, I guess, incarnation of Brady versus Manning. And as I was watching the game, it had me thinking, is that even the right one? Is Mahomes Jackson even on Brady Manning level? And then 2, is that even a good comparison? So, makes you think. So for me, Mahomes and Jackson can't be Brady and Manning. I guess it can be in one instance, because to me right now, I see Lamar Jackson as a guy who, will put up numbers, who may win a couple of MVPs. But I got to say, right now, I could see Lamar Jackson never winning a title. I mean, that may be, I guess, a hot take if you want to call it that. But until Jackson proves to me that he can be accurate and not solely be a runner who happens to play quarterback, but a quarterback who can beat you with his legs, then I don't see the Ravens ever, beating this Mahomes-led Chiefs team in the playoffs. But if you look past that, it's not like that's the only team they're going to have to get through. I mean, you have Buffalo, who's an up-and-coming team. You have New England, even though they're in transition. They look like they could easily be there in the end in the AFC playoffs. You have Pittsburgh, that's on a little bit of a resurgence with Big Ben finally being healthy after a couple of years where he was hurt. They have the Chiefs, of course. AFC South, none of the teams there are really a threat right now. And then in the AFC West, so it's mainly those teams that Baltimore will probably have to get through over the next couple of years. But then after that, some other teams may come up. You never know, maybe Cleveland or something. But yeah, so like I said, if Jackson doesn't get accuracy down, he wouldn't even be Manning. Because even Manning got a couple of rings. But Mahomes to Brady, I think in terms of winning multiple rings, I'm not mad at that comparison. Because depending on if the Chiefs can keep all of these weapons around Mahomes, and of course, the wild card with anything are injuries, but as long as the team doesn't get decimated by injuries or free agency, it's not wrong to think that Mahomes could lead the Chiefs to, he just signed a 10-year deal in Kansas City. He's already won one. So over the next 10 years, would it be crazy to think Mahomes could get 2-3 rings? I don't think so. So if he were to do that, it'd end up with 3-4 rings. Brady has 6. He's hoping to get 7 with Tampa Bay, but we'll see about that. I can see you put him in that conversation. But yeah, so I think the Jackson side of this so-called rivalry needs to step his game up. Because it's not really a rivalry until Jackson can consistently play well against the Chiefs. And that's something he hasn't really done so far in his career. But then also watching the game, one thing I was noticing was I think Jackson may actually be, even though he's still young in his career, Jackson may be at kind of a crossroads in his development. Now, follow me on this one. But when I watch Jackson now, I see Mike Vick in him. Where, you Falcons fans remember Mike Vick from before Matt Ryan, where Mike Vick would be electric, making plays with his legs. He would, split defenders, juke linemen. Next thing you blink, he's 30 yards down the field. But with that came injuries. And those injuries are kind of what hurt Mike Vick's ability to win a ring. He had a couple of playoff runs where maybe they could have, pushed for a Super Bowl title, but it just didn't happen. Not to say Mike Vick wasn't a great player, but he would have done a lot more for himself if he could have gotten the Falcons to a Super Bowl and win it. So for me, I think what Jackson needs to do to take it to the next level is he needs to try to emulate Russell Wilson. Now, as I have said on like each of my NFL episodes, I think Russell Wilson is the second best quarterback in the league behind Mahomes. I think it's not even close. I mean, yeah, you have your Aaron Rodgers people. I mean, some may still throw Tom Brady in there. I only knock Brady down because of his age at this point. But if Jackson can, like I said, at that crossroads in his development, if he can kind of stop going down the Mike Vick road and kind of turn it to Russell Wilson, he'll be much better off. And by that I mean, like, Russell Wilson can beat you with his legs. The thing is, he doesn't want to. Like, he wants to scramble around to throw the ball deep. And if you've seen Russell Wilson throw the deep ball, he throws probably the best deep ball in the NFL. He throws, high arcing passes to let his receivers run underneath them, catch them in stride, and run into the end zone. I mean, not to say Russell Wilson doesn't make bad decisions from time to time, but I mean, all quarterbacks do that, so that's nothing new. But I think that's the part of Jackson's game that if he were to ever, prove it to Russell Wilson level, then you can talk to me about that rivalry being Brady Manning. Because the thing about the Brady Manning rivalry was, even though Brady has 6, Manning has 2 rings. But when they were in the AFC together, I mean, you had several years where the representative was either Brady and the Patriots or Manning and the Colts, and then later on Manning and the Broncos. So every year you knew that one of those guys was going to come out of the AFC. So right now, sure, it may be like that, but I just feel like it's going to always be Mahomes if he has to face Jackson. I just don't see anything in Jackson right now that gives me any proof that he can beat Kansas City in a pressure-packed situation of a playoff game. Like I said, he's still young in his career. He still has time to grow. So that is something that's going to be interesting to watch for the rest of the year. Because at this point, Baltimore is 2-1. Even if Baltimore were to end up 15-1 on the year, I still wouldn't overreact to that because I saw him against the Chiefs and he looked this bad. So I would need to see it in the playoffs. But he'll have other big matchups coming up where he can show that his arm is more accurate than he showed tonight. So I wouldn't go as far as to call it that rivalry yet, but I'm not closing the book on it either. It's open. There's still a chance to, beef up the proof to make it the rivalry that it is. So that's kind of looking back at week 3 in the NFL. As I said before, it was another great week of NFL games. Now you're starting to, it's only been 3 weeks, but you're starting to see your good teams show it on the field. Because once again, with no preseason this year, you could look at the first 3-4 games as teams trying to feel out their personnel, see what they have. So you're starting to see your good teams show it out on the field and separate from your mediocre teams. And then the teams that are in the middle have serious questions as to whether they can make make their way up into the top half of the league, or if they're going to sink to the bottom half and worry about draft picks. But speaking of picks, we have to get into my week 3 picks. And we got to see how well I did. So last week, I went 2-4, which was a terrible week. But I did say last week, I was expecting to do well this week. I was expecting to turn it around. So let's see how I did. So the first game, if you don't remember, I picked the Falcons as a 3.5 point favorite over the Bears. As I spoke about in the Teams That Scratch My Head, Falcons had a 16-point lead. They blew it and it ended up losing. So that's a loss for me. 0-1 on the week. Second game I picked, I took the Patriots as a 6.5 point favorite over the Raiders. They won 36-20. So that means that's a win. So 1-1. Next game, I took the Bengals as a 6.5 point underdog against the Eagles. They ended up tying. So that means that's a win for me. So 2-1 on the week right now. Looking good. Next game. Let's see. Okay, so I took the Packers as a 3.5 point underdog against the Saints. The Packers ended up winning 37-30, so that's another win. So now I'm 3-1 on the week. Okay, this is looking like a good week. And also, the Saints were another team that almost made it to my head-scratching list. And if the Ravens didn't look as bad as they did Monday night, I easily would have put the Saints in there as the team for scratching my head because, yeah, something doesn't look right with Drew Brees. There's already questions of benching him for Jameis Winston. I mean, if it gets down to that point where you're benching Drew Brees for Jameis Winston, I mean, Brees might as well look to file his retirement papers and call it a day. But we'll see with that too. So the next pick was the Monday night game. I did take the Ravens as a 3.5 point favorite over the Chiefs. As I told you, the Ravens lost 34-20. That's a loss for me. So now I am 3-2 on the week. I have one game left. And I took the Seahawks as a 3.5 point favorite over the Cowboys. The Seahawks ended up winning 38-31. So that's a win for me. So that means I went 4-2. That's a good week. All right, so 4-2 this week. I was 4-7 after the first 2 weeks. So take the 4-2. I'm now 8-9 on the year. So I'm just one game under 500, but that's much better than where I was last week, where I was 4-7. So like I said, like I say every week, I am shooting for at least 60% by the end of the year. So I'm already close to 50% right now. So all I got to do is keep the momentum up going into next week. I mean, we'll see. I mean, that's going to be an episode later in the week where I will make my picks for week 4. It's hard to believe that we're already a quarter of the way through the NFL season. But yeah, we'll get ready for that. And I guess that's it for the NFL week. Okay, and that's the buzzer for that. But we're gonna, so I guess look forward to the episodes for this week. The biggest thing that's going on this week is we have the NBA Finals that start Wednesday night between the Lakers and the Heat. Of course, I'll give you a preview show on that. Also, we'll get ready for week 4. We have Thursday night football. So I will preview that game and probably do my pick for that game before the Sunday and Monday games, just to get it out the way. And then come the weekend, we'll look at college football. As I said last episode, which I talked about college football, definitely go back and listen to that episode if you haven't. But I talked about how college football probably needs a commissioner because they have all their conferences starting different times of the year. And it's crazy, but as more college football teams are starting to play, I guess I'll start talking about college football a little bit on here. But yeah, that's kind of a look ahead to this week's set of episodes. So if you're new, thank you for tuning in. Give the show a like, follow, subscribe. This podcast is on many of the major podcast hosting sites where you go for your podcast. So definitely tune into the other episodes. For those of you who have listened to most of these episodes and been following along with it, appreciate you tuning in again. And as I say, be safe, and I'll definitely catch you on the next episode. All right.